When polls show that 9 out of 10 Americans want something, whatever it is, you'd think that would get the immediate attention of the political class in this country. After all, 90% of Americans don't support more funding for Ukraine or punting on the debt ceiling or, hanging pride flags on our embassies. And yet, in a representative democracy, the leaders of both major parties are on board with all of those things. So whatever the standard for bipartisan urgency is, it's a lot less than 90% in the polls. With that in mind, it's more than a little bit strange that for decades, 9 out of 10 Americans, virtually the entire country really, wanted something that our political leaders barely ever talked about. Polling from Gallup has measured this. They found that from 1990 to 2013, the percentage of people in this country who wanted children had remained at the same extremely high level. Quote, Americans' attitudes about having children have remained unchanged over the past 23 years. More than 9 in 10 adults say they already have children, are planning to have children, or wish that they had children. The 5% of Americans who do not want children is virtually the same as the 4% found in Gallup, found in 1990. That was Gallup, that was a decade ago. Now, reading that, you'd think that every politician would have spent the last 30 years making sure that people could have the families they clearly wanted to have. You'd think they'd have paid attention to fertility rates, for example, and stayed on top of any downward trend in the birth rate. And yet, as Americans clearly expressed their preference for having kids, politicians and health experts totally ignored a problem that would prevent many young men from ever becoming fathers. Starting decades ago, testosterone levels in young men began declining rapidly at a rate never before seen in human history, and without any explanation. This is another thing that you would think, if you were naive anyway, you would think our political leaders would take note of. When something is happening in society that has never happened before, we should focus on it, and we should try to figure out why it's happening. When, for instance, LGBT identities are rising exponentially, seemingly out of nowhere, reaching levels in the population never before seen, or when, as mentioned, testosterone levels are falling through the floor. All of this is historic, and so we should look at it and say, what is going on here? On that latter point about testosterone, here's the data. The Journal of Clinical Endocrinology and Metabolism found that by 2006, testosterone levels in men had decreased by more than 20% since the mid-1980s, which is a staggering jump. The authors couldn't identify any reason for the drop. Quote, we observe a substantial age-independent decline in T that does not appear to be attributable to observed changes in explanatory factors, including health and lifestyle characteristics, such as smoking and obesity. The authors added, quote, it remains unclear to what these apparent population-level decreases in T are attributable. Without any real interest from anyone in the public health field, the problem got much worse over time. In 2020, the journal European Urology found that average testosterone levels had dropped by approximately 25% since 1999. The researchers found that, quote, testosterone deficiency has a prevalence of 20% among adolescent and young adult males, and that, again, there was no clear explanation. Now, because people were getting a lot fatter in this period, and still are, a lot of media reports speculated that there was a causal connection there, since obesity tends to lower testosterone levels. But the researchers again determined that that was not the cause of the problem. Quote, the trend remains significant even among men with normal BMI. As a consequence of this crisis, which has metastasized, more men than ever in this country are suffering from a series of debilitating disorders that undermine and in some cases eliminate their reproductive fitness. So we're talking about problems like less bone density, less muscle mass, more chronic disease, erectile dysfunction, low sperm count, just to name a few. We're seeing a dramatic increase in all of these problems right now. Sperm counts in particular have fallen off a cliff. Watch.
We turn now to male infertility. It is an affliction that many struggle with in silence, and we could be headed toward a crisis. Researchers have found that male sperm count has plummeted by 50% since the 1970s. But why? ABC's Trevor Ault has this report.
Dr. Shanna Swan is an environmental and reproductive epidemiologist and the author of Countdown, How Our Modern World is Threatening Sperm Counts, Altering Male and Female Reproductive Development, and Imperiling the Future of the Human Race. Her team collected and analyzed nearly 200 studies of more than 40,000 men, and they found in Western countries from 1973 to 2011, the average sperm count decreased from 99 million per milliliter to 47 million, a drop of more than 50%, and a pace that, if it were to continue, could have an enormous impact.
Is that as alarming as it would seem to be?
It's very alarming. Sounds like a lot of sperm, 47 million.
Alarming, yeah. I mean, the title of the book says it's imperiling the future of the human race, which it is. I mean, these are the kinds of problems that are rarely talked about, especially among the political class. And yet, the future of humanity actually hangs in the balance. Sperm counts are down, and with it, so is libido. A recent Pew study found that 63% of men under the age of 30 are single. Now, for comparison, just a few years ago, in 2019, that number was 51%. So it was very high back then, just a few years ago, and now it's even higher. And these are post-COVID numbers from Pew also, so this isn't because of social distancing or whatever. Millions of young men don't want to date, or at least they aren't dating, even if they want to. The relatively few men who are dating and getting married are now doing it much later in life. According to the Wall Street Journal, from 1990 to 2019, the percentage of people who get married in middle age has increased by nearly 75% for women and 45% for men. The consequences are what you'd expect. When people get married later in life, as their fertility declines, birth rates drop. And they have. In the 1970s, the average number of children born per woman in the United States was 3. Now that average number is less than 2. In fact, in 2021, the birth rate was just 1.6 births per woman, which is half of what it was in the 1950s. Now that is well below replacement level, meaning if this trend continues indefinitely, the U.S. population will eventually die out completely. The only reason that overall population numbers are holding steady in this country is due to immigration. The native U.S. population in this country is dying out and being replaced by people imported from other parts of the world. In a world filled with uncertainties, it's crucial to be ready for whatever comes your way. Whether it's a natural disaster, a sudden emergency, or unforeseen circumstances, having a reliable food storage system can provide you with peace of mind and the assurance that you and your loved ones will be well taken care of. Right now, My Patriot Supply is knocking $200 off their popular 3-month emergency food kit to help you start growing your supply. Go to preparewithwalsh.com and grab this special price before it ends. Your 3-month emergency food kit provides over 2,000 calories each day for optimal strength and energy in stressful situations. You can enjoy a wide variety of My Patriot Supply food, from buttermilk, pancakes, chicken Alfredo, rice pudding. Their meals have you covered for every part of your day. The best part is each meal is actually delicious. Don't wait for disaster to strike before taking action. Invest in your safety and your well-being and that of your family by securing your food storage today. Go to preparewithwalsh.com and save $200 on each kit that your family needs. Go to preparewithwalsh.com right now. That's preparewithwalsh.com. Buying a new car can be a stressful experience for anybody, especially if you're a first-time buyer or you have no credit. Before you walk into a dealership and spend the entire day with the crowds, the stress, the potential to not even find the right car, you need to check out CarZing. CarZing is completely changing the way you buy a car online by partnering with credit agencies, lenders, and over 25,000 dealers nationwide. CarZing provides you with everything you need before stepping foot into a dealership. Once you find the right car at your ideal budget, all you got to do is bring your saved deal voucher with you to the dealership to finalize your next ride. It is so simple. And even if you're not in the market for a new car, you could check out CarZing anyway. CarZing's online window shopping experience goes beyond mere images. You can dive deep into each vehicle specifications, their features, their performance capabilities, zoom in on the craftsmanship of the interior, marvel at the cutting-edge technology, and admire the meticulous attention to detail that sets these automobiles apart from the rest. CarZing helps make your experience faster, cheaper, less stressful. Visit carzing.com/Walsh today and find the best deals near you. That's carzing.com/Walsh. Given the scale of this operation, you might even say that this is a great replacement. You aren't supposed to say that, of course, but the truth is the truth, regardless. How big of a role is the decline in testosterone playing in this? Well, you'll see a lot of news reports claiming that it's not playing a role at all. They're saying people don't want children anymore. But that's not really true. As the UNC Carolina Population Center found this year, quote, birth rates are falling in the United States, but it isn't because Americans say they want fewer kids. In fact, young Americans haven't changed the number of children they intend to have in decades, which is very interesting. So the explanation is not that human nature has changed. Gallup wasn't wrong all those years. Human beings still fundamentally desire the same things they always have. The explanation then has to be something else. And if you go back to that ABC report we just played, they interview someone who says that she has found the culprit. Watch.
Dr. Swan says certain chemicals pervasive in our environment are also having an impact. They're called endocrine disrupting chemicals. These chemicals are found in products many of us use every day, from things like electronics to plastics, even cosmetics and food packaging. Dr. Patricia Hunt, a geneticist at Washington State University, studied their impact and their prevalence.
The reason they're called that is because they have the ability to mimic or interfere with our body's hormones. These chemicals can alter the formation of organs and organ systems in the fetus and change behavior and influence things like our reproductive ability.
Is it even possible to avoid them, or are they that pervasive that it's kind of a foregone conclusion?
It is impossible to avoid them.
So the explanation for declining sperm counts, according to that researcher in the clip, is that there are chemicals in the products that are impossible to avoid. It's a foregone conclusion that fertility is declining. You just have to accept it as the price you pay to live in a modern society with things like grocery stores and, cell phones and shampoo bottles. There's no need for personal responsibility whatsoever. It's just the way things are, we're told. Now, to be fair to that researcher, there probably are chemicals in many products that are affecting male fertility. We're ingesting a lot of chemicals that we shouldn't be ingesting, and that's a problem in its own right. But as a complete explanation for what we're seeing, intuitively, it doesn't make the most sense. Like, it remains the case that if you, even if you're eating what everybody else is eating, if you spend a lot of time outside in the sun instead of staying inside staring at a screen all day, you'll be more alert, more focused, more engaged. Everyone knows that. That's because the sun stimulates your pituitary gland, releasing hormones that stimulate testosterone production. So if we can have that kind of impact on our testosterone levels just by going outside, what else can we do? There's new research showing that actually there is one simple trick that more young men could try and should. If they want to preserve their testosterone, they can start by putting down the porn, turning off the porn. Putting the phone down altogether really is a good start. And if our political leaders wanted to take a serious step to increase fertility rates by the same token, they could start passing laws to help free the population, especially the young male population, from the stranglehold that the porn industry has on it. Of course, no public health expert, quote unquote, in America would ever run a study supporting that conclusion. So this research comes from the journal Frontiers in Endocrinology, where researchers in China have put together an article called "Pornography Use Could Lead to Addiction and Was Associated with Reproductive Hormone Levels and Semen Quality." The researchers studied hundreds of college students, and they separated the students who had exposure to pornography in early adolescence from those who hadn't. And the study found that, quote, early pornography exposure was associated with lower adult FSH, progesterone, and prolactin levels in serum. And that's significant because normal prolactin levels are necessary to maintain a normal level of testosterone. Therefore, as the researchers put it, quote, pornography use at an early stage may affect the function of the HPG axis and subsequently affect the secretion of steroid hormones such as estrogen, androgen, prolactin, and progesterone, eventually affecting semen quality. These effects were not temporary. The researchers found that, quote, earlier contact with pornography might lead to the disturbance of sexual hormone secretion and therefore lead to lower sperm concentration in adult semen. This is one of the many reasons that they banned pornography in China. So the question is, have you ever heard of this study? Probably not. Because outside of The Sun and the New York Post, which both reported on the study over the weekend, it's hard to find a single publication in any country that's talking about the effects of pornography on testosterone production. No politician is saying a word about it. And again, that's odd, seeing as these findings relate to an issue that 90% of Americans care about, which is fertility. Not to mention, human society fundamentally depends on fertility in order to continue existing. So I'd say it's pretty important for that reason alone. And it's not just porn. There's good reason to believe that any kind of antisocial activity involving a screen will have a negative impact on your body. We can assume that staring at social media on your phone all day doesn't help your testosterone levels either. Same for sitting around and watching TV all day, binging Netflix, playing video games, or whatever else. Seems to be pretty intuitive. And for some reason, medical experts haven't made that connection. All the senators and congressmen who want to ban TikTok haven't made that connection either. But it's obviously there. The only real solution here lies not with those politicians or public health experts. After all, I've been far too generous to these people by saying that they haven't noticed the drop in fertility rates and how it's connected to rampant porn use, or they don't care about it. In truth, of course, many of them have noticed it, and they're happy about it. The system wants young people, young men in particular, to be numb, satiated, neutered, because men who are aware and proactive, men who go out and start families and have lots of kids, these men are threats to the system. They're harder for the powers that be to control, and they raise children who are the same. And that's why young men need to realize that what they were told was just mere harmless distractions were in fact hindering them at a biological level from doing what they most wanted in life. And now they have to pull themselves out of the digital porn-laced fog that they're in and live a real life with real responsibilities and real relationships. That's the only antidote. And it means pursuing marriage and family life and pursuing it early in adulthood. The overwhelming majority of Americans, that's what they desire. They've always desired that. And contrary to what they've been told over and over again, they can still have it. That'll do it for this portion of shows. Move over to the members block. You can become a member today by using code Walsh at checkout for 2 months free on all annual plans. Hope to see you there. If not, talk to you tomorrow. Godspeed.